He left his ranch early with a clear plan in his mind. Daniel needed a milk cow before winter. The grass was good this year, the barn had space, and his savings could cover the cost. He tied a canvas lead rope to his saddle horn even though he was taking the truck, because habits were steady things for him. He checked the small bank envelope in his jacket pocket, locked the door, and started down the road toward the county fairgrounds. The air felt cool and clean. The sky was wide. He thought about feed, calm temper, and a gentle eye. He liked calm animals. Calm made work smoother and kinder for everyone. The fairground smelled like hay and kettle corn. People laughed in small groups. Children tried to balance on the fence rails and slid down with red faces and bright smiles. Rows of pens held cattle, sheep, and a few goats that looked curious about everything. A man at the gate stamped Daniel's hand and handed him a sheet with auction numbers. He walked slow, looked careful, and asked quiet questions. He ran a palm along a red cow's rib cage and nodded at her good shape. He asked the owner about age, calving history, and feed. The owner said she was steady in the milking stall and easy to lead. Daniel thought, this one might suit the pasture and the barn. He thanked the owner and stepped aside to count money in his head. That was when a soft voice behind him said, "Sir, do you know where a person asks about ranch work?" Daniel turned. A young woman stood beside a folding table that held beaded bracelets and hand-sewn cloth bags. Her hair was in a neat braid. Her coat was plain and clean. Her eyes were steady and watchful, like someone who learned to read a room before stepping into it. "I'm Daniel," he said. "The county extension booth by the arena keeps a list for ranch work." She nodded but did not move away. "My name is Ayana," she said. "I am Apache. I am looking for a safe place and honest work. I can cook, mend, and ride. I know cattle and I listen to animals. I came with my aunt today, but she needs to be back with her sister by sundown." Her voice was calm. It did not ask for pity. It offered truth like a level board laid across two sawhorses. Daniel did not like to rush past a person who asked a fair question. "I can walk you there," he said. He glanced toward the arena. "It is not far." They crossed the gravel together. As they walked, the dust made small clouds around their boots. On the way, he learned small pieces of her story. Her grandmother had passed in the spring. The house where she stayed would soon be full when cousins returned. She had a plan to earn wages, save money, and if she found a partner she could trust, build a home of equal respect. She spoke about partnership like a carpenter speaks about beams and corners. It was not a dream made of fog. It was a plan made of strong lines. At the extension booth, a clerk smiled and passed a simple form across the table. "Write your skills," the clerk said. "Leave a number or an address where people can reach you." Ayana looked at the empty line where a phone number should go. "The bus only comes twice a day," she said. "We will catch the late one. Where are you staying tonight?" Daniel asked. "My aunt and I will go back on the bus and think," she said. "Then I will decide what comes next." Daniel usually moved slow with big choices. He liked to walk the fence lines in his mind at least 3 times before he set a post. But some moments were clear like a winter sky when the wind pushes every cloud away. He had heard the steady way Ayana spoke. He had seen the care in her beadwork and the good way she watched the animals. "Would you and your aunt like to see my ranch before you go?" he asked, and no promises. "Just a visit and a hot meal." Ayana looked to her aunt, who sat on a bench with a shawl in her lap. The older woman had been watching with quiet eyes. She studied Daniel's face the way elders do, not searching for fancy words but for honest light. At last she smiled. "We will come for the meal," she said. "We will hear how you talk about your home." They rode in Daniel's truck on a narrow road that followed a creek. He pointed to windbreaks and low spots where frost stayed late. He told them which fence posts wanted new wire. He did not brag. He simply named things the way a person names friends. At the ranch, he set a kettle on the stove and warmed a pot of stew he had made the night before. He cut thick slices of bread and set butter in a small dish. The kitchen window faced west. The afternoon light lay warm across the table. During the meal, the aunt asked the kind of questions that come from wisdom. How did he treat seasonal help in spring? Did he pay on time? Did he keep clear records? Daniel answered with plain words and did not try to dress up the truth. He said he was not rich, but he was steady. He said he wrote down every sale and every expense. He said he fixed mistakes when he made them. He said he tried to listen more than he spoke. Ayana asked her own questions. Would a woman have a voice in the house? Could she keep her language and teach it to future children? Would he honor visits with her family on their own land and in their own way? Daniel put down his fork and gave each question the care it deserved. Yes, he said. Yes to your voice. Yes to your language. Yes to visits and to respect. After they ate, they walked to the barn. Dust drifted in soft bands where the light came through the boards. Ayanna stroked the neck of a gentle old cow and whispered a few words in her language. The cow settled and leaned her head into Ayanna's hand. You keep your animals calm, Ayanna said. I can see it in how they stand and breathe. When it was time to drive them back to town, the aunt asked to stop at the courthouse. We need to ask about papers, she said in a careful tone. Daniel parked and held the door. Inside, a clerk explained what the office handled most: deeds and marriage licenses. The words sat between them like tools on a bench, serious, useful, and not to be lifted without thought. Ayanna took a breath. She looked Daniel in the eyes. I am not for sale, she said, clear and steady. I will never be. But I am ready for true partnership if you are a man who keeps faith. I can bring love, work, and a future. I will promise it with my whole life. If you cannot, please say so and we will part with respect. Something settled inside Daniel. It was like the moment a beam slides into its notch and the shape of a roof begins to make sense. He had come to buy a cow. He had not come to trade for a person. He would never do that. But life does not always bring what we expect. He thought of the empty second chair at his kitchen table. He thought of winter nights when the wind spoke at the windows and there was no answer in the room. He thought of Ayanna's steady eyes and careful questions. I will not buy you, he said. I will stand beside you. If we do this, we do it with equal hands and equal hearts. The aunt's shoulders eased. The clerk waited with a small, patient smile, as if she had seen many kinds of courage in that room. They did not rush. They asked every plain question they could think of. What would each keep in their own name? How would they share new savings? What were their rights and duties if trouble came? How would they speak to each other when they disagreed? They wrote a simple agreement in clear language. Each would keep personal savings earned before today. New savings would be joint. Each would have a strong voice in the home. Each would honor the other's family, language, and ways. If conflict grew, both could call a pause, seek quiet, and ask elders to help them find a fair path. 2 witnesses signed. Daniel and Ayanna signed last, side by side. When they walked back to the truck, the sky wore its first thin stars. The road home was smooth and dark like a ribbon laid across the land. Ayanna sat with her hands folded, calm and sure. I promise love and a future, she said. It was not a speech. It was a seed placed in warm soil. Daniel kept his eyes on the road and let the promise settle in him. I promise the same, he said at last. They reached the ranch and stood a moment by the porch steps. The night smelled like sage and cool wood. A far coyote called once and then went silent. Daniel opened the door and turned on a soft lamp. The room looked the same as it had that morning, but it felt different now. It felt like a place where 2 people could set down their names and keep them, and also set down their plans and join them. He hung his jacket on the chair back. The canvas lead rope still looped from the saddle horn in the corner. He smiled at the sight because it reminded him of the errand that brought him to town. He had started the day planning to lead a cow home. He had ended the day choosing a partner who came by her own will, with her own voice and with a promise she made freely. Ayanna set her beaded bag on a nail by the door and looked around the room. She did not hurry. She stood still and listened as if a house had a heartbeat. Then she placed a small photo of her grandmother on the mantel. Daniel brought a clean glass and filled it with water for a night flower she carried wrapped in a cloth. She set the stem in the glass and smiled. My grandmother called this plant a faithful friend, she said. It blooms when mornings are still cool. It reminds the house to be kind, Daniel nodded. Kind is the right word, he said. That is what I want this place to be. The sun rose pale and kind on their first morning together. Daniel boiled coffee while Ayanna opened the back door and let the cold air sweep in, just for a moment to wake the house. She set 2 cups on the table and looked over the small list they had written the night before. The list was simple. Check the creek fence, count the hay bales, sweep the barn aisle, call Auntie at noon. They ate warm bread with jam and spoke about the day in quiet voices. It felt like a gentle promise. Do today's work, do it well, and make the evening soft. They began with the creek fence. Frost still silvered the grass where the sun had not reached. Daniel carried a bucket with staples and a hammer. Ayanna carried a small coil of wire and a tool she liked, a pair of pliers worn smooth by years of use. They walked along the fence and tested each section with their hands. Where a post leaned, Daniel pushed his shoulder against it while Ayanna packed the earth with her heel and a flat stick. Where a wire sagged, she tightened it in slow turns so the pull would spread evenly. Even pressure keeps things from breaking, she said. Daniel nodded. Same with people, he answered. By mid-morning, the creek moved like glass. A bluebird lifted from a low branch and skated across the water with a long call. Ayanna paused and watched. My grandmother used to tell me that when the bird calls like that, the weather is about to change, she said. We might get snow on the weekend. Daniel checked the sky the way he always did. He smiled because the clouds did look different, taller and cleaner along the far edge. We will bring one more load of wood to the porch, he said. Thank you for the sign. They ate a small lunch in the barn doorway, legs dangling over the step. Ayanna pulled 2 apples from her bag and split one with a pocket knife. Daniel talked about the pasture rotation he wanted to try in spring so the grass could rest. Ayanna listened and asked patient questions. How many days in a strip? She said, how will we move water? Can we mark the plan with stakes so we see it before we change it? Daniel felt something new while he spoke. It was like talking to a friend who could see the same picture and add steady lines where your sketch was thin. In the afternoon, they visited the feed store. Mr. Grady at the counter had an unsure look at first, the way people do when change walks in with a clear voice. But Ayanna stepped up and asked about winter minerals and salt blocks, and how the new shipment compared with last year's. She thanked him for careful answers and wrote notes on a small card. Daniel noticed how Mr. Grady's shoulders eased. On the way out, the owner said, if you need a pallet next month, I'll set one aside for you. It was the kind of sentence that meant the ground under your feet was getting strong. They made the pantry ready that evening. Ayanna labeled jars with a pencil so the words could be changed if they needed. She used simple names, flour, oats, beans, rice, coffee. Daniel laughed when she made a small tag that said cookies and taped it to a tin. You plan for Joy too, he said. She smiled. Joy helps a house keep heat. They set the kettle on and sipped tea by the window. They did not speak about forever. They spoke about tomorrow and the next day, and that was enough. On the 3rd day, a thin heifer lay down and did not rise when the herd moved. Daniel felt the old tightness in his jaw, the one that came when an animal might fail. Ayanna touched his sleeve. We do steps, she said. We do not rush and we do not freeze. They called the vet. They carried blankets from the house and warmed them by the stove. In the stall, Ayanna sat with the heifer's head on her lap and combed her ears with quiet strokes. Daniel mixed electrolytes and checked the hooves. The vet came, listened, worked with steady hands, and left medicine with clear instructions. By dusk, the heifer stood, legs shaking but strong enough to hold. Daniel closed his eyes for a breath. Thank you, he said to no one and to everyone. Thank you, Ayanna echoed, her palm still gentle on the animal's neck. The days found a rhythm that held. In the mornings, Daniel said fewer words until the first cup of coffee, and Ayanna hummed low songs that sounded like walking through pines. She practiced her language at the table, and Daniel asked her to teach him greetings and blessings so he could answer with respect. In town on Saturday, she set up a small table with beadwork. She priced her pieces fair and offered mending for ranch hands who brought clean, folded shirts. Children came by to watch her stitch. She showed them the backside of the work, where neat knots told a story of patience. A mother asked if she would teach a class. Ayanna said yes once a month on the library porch when the weather turned warm. Circles widened in quiet ways. They chose simple house changes that felt big. Ayanna set a barrel under the barn eave to catch roof water. Daniel moved a shelf so light reached the table where she liked to sew. They hung a small bell by the back door and made a code just for them. 1 ring meant come see the sky, 2 meant tea is ready, 3 meant I need your hands, and 4, saved for someday, meant good news. They did not ring 4 often, but the thought of it waiting on the hook made the days hopeful. When snow came at the weekend, as the bird had promised, they were ready. Wood stacked on the porch, blankets mended. Soup simmering from a recipe Ayanna's grandmother had taught her. Corn, beans, squash, a little jerky sliced thin, and a bay leaf that made the whole house smell like a warm story. Daniel brought out the ledger Ayanna had sketched. They wrote the week's costs and sales in clean columns and watched the numbers speak to them on the page. It felt easier to breathe when money turned from fog into lines they could follow together. A few folks still stared when they walked down Main Street, because people need time to learn new pictures, but many smiles came quick now. The librarian waved and held up a book on dryland gardens. The postmaster asked about the heifer and looked relieved at the good news. At church, an elder asked Ayanna about her beadwork and ended by ordering a gift for his daughter. When someone asked a sharp question about names, Ayanna answered with grace. "We carry both," she said. "This house can hold both." Daniel felt proud in a quiet, steady way that lasted all afternoon. One clear morning, a crate arrived from the fair trader, the red cow with the soft eye Daniel had asked about on that first day. She stepped from the trailer calm as a cloud and walked into the pen as if she had been born there. Ayanna stroked her neck and whispered a blessing. "Welcome home," Daniel said, and the cow flicked her ear as if she understood. It felt right that the errand that began everything had finally come around, simple and complete. In late winter, a dry spell touched the pasture. Daniel spread hay with care. Ayanna drew a map of the field and marked gentle rotations just a few days at a time, so the ground could rest. They moved a trough and ran a hose in a new line. It looked like a small change. It felt like wisdom. After 2 weeks, green nubs showed along the fence where the herd had passed and the grass had slept. "A future," she said, kneeling to touch the new blades. "We are making one." They told stories in the evenings, not grand ones, but stories that make rooms warm. Daniel spoke about his father teaching him how to hold a level and trust the bubble, because truth is small and clear like that when you let it be. Ayanna told about summer rides with cousins when the world smelled like sweet earth after rain, and how her grandmother would set a clean bowl on the porch to welcome good luck. They set a bowl on their own porch not because magic lives in bowls, but because good habits do. Spring came soft and shy, and their market table grew busy. Ayanna offered a mending day for free once a month, 1 item per person with fair rules and a smile that meant the rules were kindness, not gates. Daniel brought little bundles of kindling and gave them to elders who could use a warm start at dawn. The sheriff stopped by and said hello with the kind of nod that says a person belongs. Belonging is not a loud thing. It is a steady thread you feel under your fingers when you lean on the right part of the cloth. On their wedding day's first anniversary, they walked to the creek at sunrise. Daniel carried the agreement they had written with the clerk, the one with plain words and fair terms. Ayanna carried a small pouch of cornmeal. The water moved slow and sure. She sprinkled a pinch and whispered thanks for the year behind and the road ahead. Daniel read the lines and they both signed again at the bottom, not because the first ink had faded, but because choosing each other felt good to do in present tense. They laughed when the pen left a blot. "Even our marks look like seeds," Ayanna said. As the sun lifted, the bell at the back door rang once by itself in the light breeze. They looked at each other and smiled. One ring in their little code meant come see the sky, so they did. The sky was wide, the pasture green in promise, the herd steady, the red cow grazing with slow content. The house behind them did not look grand, but it looked honest and strong. It looked like a place where 2 voices fit,